Hi, my name is Alison Woodhouse and I'm talking to you about applying to do a PhD as someone who's much older than the majority of students currently studying at the universities where I'm attached and where most people go. So I turned 60 this year and yeah, it's interesting to be doing a funded PhD at this point in my life, and it's absolutely fabulous as well. So my journey here was that I worked, I had 4 children, I raised them, and I worked as a teacher, an English teacher, and I also left teaching and did a mix of freelance jobs. I mentored other writers, I taught creative writing to adults, I do critiques and reviews, and I write myself. So I'd thought about doing a PhD back in my 30s, but it wasn't the right time. My children were too young and I didn't have the capacity, the mental space, the physical space, or the financial freedom to follow it then. But it's always been there at the back of my mind, the idea of doing one. Obviously I worried about the fact that I was going to be so much older. How would that be? Even if I worried that it would stop me getting the funding, which it didn't, so that's fantastic. And I worried about, if I got the funding, was that fair? Should that funding go to someone who was younger than me, who it would benefit for many, many more years going forward than it will for me? So that was a sort of guilt thing. Was I taking up a resource that should go to someone else? And would I be accepted? Would I fit in? Would I find a group? Would I cope as well? Would I have the dexterity mentally? Would I have the sort of persistence that you have to have for doing a PhD, because you've got to sustain this piece of work over 4 years? Would I run out of steam? You know, all these things were worries before I applied, and all I can say is that I'm in the middle of it. Well, I'm in the 2nd year now, and I needn't have worried about those things because it's marvellous to be doing it. I have never once encountered anybody who's implied or had any kind of idea that I shouldn't be there, I shouldn't be doing it. They were just my own personal demons. And in terms of energy and application, you know, it's so stimulating to be doing it, and I feel so privileged and lucky to be doing it that it's sort of resolved itself, those worries, because I think that I fully appreciate the time that I've got, that I've been given with this gift of this funding, to really throw myself into this and take everything out of it. And I don't feel a million times different to the people that I'm doing it with. You know, when we talk and we're sharing our kind of like triumphs and tribulations, I don't feel that my age is making it harder, and in some ways it's making it, I've got a different perspective on it. So yeah, it's both, but it's not a problem. I found it quite straightforward when I decided to apply. I had 2 sort of helps which were really lucky. My daughter had applied to do a PhD through the DTP and it hadn't worked out because she'd been through the process the year before. She introduced the idea to me because I didn't know about the process or the possibility of funding. So she sort of started the idea, and then I was also talking to someone. I ran a short story competition, and one of the shortlisted authors we were doing the Zoom launch, and she had just received funding from the SWWDTP in the 2nd year of her PhD, and was incredibly enthusiastic and excited about me applying. and offered to read through my application as I developed it and to also talk through with me the process. So we had a video conversation, and a video call, and she sort of calmed any fears and really talked me through kind of what to expect and what to try and pull together for an application, because I had the idea of what I wanted to research, but I didn't have a really clear idea about how to present that as an application. The DTP themselves have a really informative website, and they do run evening sessions on Zoom, so you can ask questions. Yes, I think talk to people, do as much research, go on the websites of your home institutions as well, because they will also be talking about their research areas and what they have going alongside that supports your research in a bigger sense. I mean, what's the impact they have, and where do they set up their different connections across the academic world and also the local communities, and all the different ways that you can have impact as a PhD researcher. Look at where you want to be, and I think most of all, remember that it's your PhD, it's your research, so you're not trying to fit round what you think somebody else will want. You've got to be really certain this is what you want to spend the next 4 years doing and thinking about, and ask yourself why. And really, you won't know the answers, and during the 4 years, you will change completely what you're doing and how you're doing it, and that's absolutely great and right, because you're on a journey and you've got to be curious and open. But as long as you're constantly kind of checking in with yourself, this is important to me. This is important that I need to now work out why it's important in a bigger picture, and keep going back to that. And I think that will really help with your applications. I mean, I had an amazing first year where I was funded to go to 3 different conferences. 2 of them in other countries, and they were, there was never any question that would not happen. I was able to put in my application, show how it was relevant to my work, and it was all approved. I've also, I think that the training that is on offer is absolutely fantastic. And again, I suppose, talking to you from someone who's much older doing this, I have never felt that anyone has said, oh, well, we're not going to give it to you because we'd rather give it to somebody else. And those were the worries that I came in with, and that's not happened at all. And when I've gone to these things, and it's now I'm feeling like I don't even think anymore about, well, I'm so much older than everyone, because when I go, it's just a room full of people who are completely fascinating and interesting, and have got all their own things to say, and that they're interested in, and they're researching, and it's just an exchange. So it's irrelevant, really. And that's been a wonderful thing to do. So the training the DTP offer, there's a lot of support for you, not just about how to do the practical parts of your research, but also there's a lot of stuff out there that they offer which is supporting you to organise yourself, to think about how you get through the 4 years. They've broken it down, and your home institutions will have those supports as well, but the DTP have a lot of very useful support for that kind of thing. They also offer they arrange for placements, so you can apply to get placements to do things. I haven't done one yet because there hasn't been the right placement for me, but they've been really helpful, when we've talked about it and trying to look for it. So again, make sure that you take advantage of that when you're here. The induction at the beginning of the first year was so useful, and it's a bit like when you do anything, when you go to school or you get a new job, the people you end up sitting with the first time in that room end up being your lifelong friends, and that happened pretty much. You kind of like relate to people and get to know them, and it's very important to make that effort and support them, and you'll get the support back. And so I have found, we are a consortium of 10 universities spread quite wide, but I do make an effort to see people in real life that I've met and who other practice-based PhD researchers, and it's been great because I've been able to call up when there's the panic about the upgrade 5 or whatever it is, and share those things, but also celebrate their achievements. I know people who are a few years ahead of me, and so that's really interesting to see them go through as well. But there is a community there. A PhD is quite a lot of work on your own. I do go onto campus when I can, but I live a little bit away from it. But if I can get into the library, that's great. But there's a lot of undergraduates around, and it's a different sort of setup, and each home institution has a different place for their PGRs. So it may be that your university has a specific place you can meet or not, but just make the contacts as and when you can, whether it's on an online forum and then you follow it up, or when you go to the in-person training days and things like that, because it's really worth doing. It took me a lot longer to organise myself than I expected. I've worked at home for a long time, and I write, so I'm disciplined about the time. But it was trying to get this sense of I'm writing a novel as part of my PhD, but I'm also doing research, and I got to work out my time differently to how I was doing it before. And I think it was a surprise to me that it took as long as it did for me to settle, and the questions that I was asking that I thought my research was going to be looking at changed, and I was very reluctant to change it. And that's why I think it's very important to make your community and make your contacts and know who to talk to about things like that. If you're feeling, am I doing this right? Everybody doing it is going to feel those things at some point. So that's the first 6 months. I'd say I floundered quite a lot. I was doing every bit of training that was coming my way without really understanding how the whole thing came together. And I'm not digitally as adept as younger people would be. I'm learning, but it doesn't come easily, so I still use a pen and a paper. But I'm learning what I need to do, and I'm doing it as I need to do it. So yeah, they were probably the biggest challenges, but there is support out there. You could email any number of people who are either doing HR or admin or whatever and say, I'm having this wobble about this, and they would either know how to reassure you or point you in the direction of someone who will. So yeah, I think the biggest thing that I wish I'd known before I'd started, although my daughter did try and not warn me, but try and let me know, is that I would change as I'm doing it. And it's not just because my research questions changed, I think I've changed as well. In a way that I'm very excited about. But you embrace it. Just embrace everything about it, and let that change happen, because you are learning. You're learning in a completely different way to any way that you've learnt before. But yes, reach out and talk to people. Anything you're not sure about, ask, basically. And people want to help you. People have done it before, and people know that there are real dips in the journey, and there's highs, and so they're there to support you as well. Being part of this funded family is just a wonderful, wonderful place to be.